Oh, I'm live. Hi, it's been a minute. So this is new. This is new. New art, new room, new setup, everything. I'm not by myself. Well, I'm never by myself because Teresa's always with me. And so Teresa's here, and then I have two guests. So excited about it. They do not want to be on camera, right? No, they do not. So if you hear people talking, it's them. And because I've told them that they can ask questions if they want to. They don't have to just be quiet, okay? So anyway, friends of God, we're going to start this study. Things might, I'm still working on things, trying to, and I have to talk over here still. So don't let me, good morning. Hi. I can't forget that. And now I feel a little silly, people watching me like it's one thing for Teresa to know how goofy I am. It's another thing for my friends to see it live and in person. So anyway, friends of God, I thought about doing this study because, and now again, I say I'm making it up as I go along because I'm not following a book per se. So I'm following the Bible. Another one. My room looks really cute too, guys. I mean, I'm pretty proud of what it turned out like. Anyway, I decided to do this, friends of God, because thinking about the patriarchs and people that throughout the Bible who have had relationships with the Lord and what that looked like and why their relationships were what they were, really kind of, I thought, well, what do these people have in common? What is it about them that made them so close to the Lord that they had this relationship with them? And so I really wanted to kind of go through, and so I just kind of started naming names that first came to my mind, like who? Well, we'll start at the beginning. Well, we know that Abraham was considered a friend of God. So when we look at Abraham, what is it about Abraham that kind of made him who he was, that gave him that relationship, that made him so close? And the funny thing is each story, as I've done it, because I'm ahead of, we're doing this with the youth on Wednesday nights as well. And it's kind of a youth through college and career. I mean, we've got, y'all, it's a really funny mix. We've got sixth graders, we've got little sixth grade boys, and we've got 25-year-olds. So it's really an interesting mix of people, and it's been amazing. It's so fun. But so I'm a little ahead of, this is the first one here, but I'm several lessons ahead. But what's been interesting is as I've studied each person, it's really kind of something specific for each person has stuck out to me. It's been something different, like, okay, well, here's Abraham, well, in all of his story that we know about him, what has stuck out the most? And then we did Jacob, and what stuck out the most in Jacob's relationship? And we're going to do Joseph tonight. Well, what has stuck out for that? So it's been interesting to kind of look at that and see these men in their lives and what has kind of made them who they are and made them who we can emulate and be like, and look at stuff like that. So, and what this kind of looks like is, we just go through the story of Abraham. We just kind of go through parts of him and say, okay, well, in this part, look at the decision that he made, and what does this show us about his decision and how he acted throughout. And it's a little rambly, and that's just how it is. When I don't have someone else telling me what to say next, that's how it is. So the story of Abraham starts in Genesis 12. This is interesting. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff that makes me go, huh. So I was like, well, all right, I want to know, really, because the two chapters preceding 12 are about Noah. And so you've got the flood and all of that, and then Noah's children and how that ends up and the repopulating of the earth after the flood. And I thought, well, how much time passes? How much time has passed between Noah and Abraham? What's that look like? And so I asked my pastor Shane, I was like, so how much time? And he was like, well, I don't know. I can't, there's several different, I don't ask easy questions, I've been told. So what he said, well, there's lots of different thoughts. I mean, he's like, some people say that the first 11 chapters of the Bible didn't really happen, that they're just story, that they're just something. And he goes, and then there's other schools of thought that say this. There's others that say so. Anyway, you just kind of have to figure it out. And he and I did not have a long enough discussion about it because we moved on to other things. But as I started looking on the internet, and the internet's always right, one of the several things that kept coming up was it was about 400 years between them. And that is really interesting to me because at the end of the Old Testament, at Malachi, the Lord was silent. God was silent and he did not speak through prophets or anything. He was very silent for that 400-year span. So between Malachi and Matthew, there's a 400-year span of nothing. And then when he speaks again, it's about Jesus. It's about Jesus coming in. And I thought, well, this is interesting to me because if there's all of this unrest, the Lord has been mad. The Lord has done all these things. He's wiped out the earth. He has saved Noah. He has done this. He's saved, 2 by 2, all of that. He's caused that destruction. And then 400 years later, he speaks to a random man that didn't know him. And that's how our faith starts. That's the beginning of 3 faiths, of Christianity, of Judaism, and of Muslim. Islam. Thank you, Islam. See, that's why it's good to have people here. They can fact check. So there's 3 things that are happening with Abraham, and it's after this period of destruction and then quiet. And so when we get to, and we know what happens all through the Old Testament, how Israel goes astray and they're waiting for a savior and they've been treated badly and all of this happens. And then we get to Matthew and all of a sudden an angel of the Lord appears to a virgin girl named Mary and he says, you are going to have the Savior of the world. You are going to have a baby, and I can have a baby. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. It's going to happen, and his name will be Jesus. So these 2 things in my mind seem so similar to me because it's the beginning of something. And this 400 year, whether it's for real, but in my mind, I like to think that it is, and that's how it happens. So in this 400-year span, we've got this nothing bad, and then it's like God speaks, and here we go. Here's a new story. Here's a new chapter of something else that's going to happen. So that's really interesting to me, but it could totally be made up. But it's a good story, right? So we see this. So when Abram calls this, and I wish that I had maps, but I don't. So Abram is from it's from Ur of the Chaldeans, which is about. Let me see. I wrote it down. It's like where I think it's where not Babylon, Baghdad. I think it's where over kind of in that area. And so his family moves. His dad's name was Terah, and his family moves and they go north and they end up around Turkey. And that's Haran. So that's where Abram, and at this point his name is Abram, that's where Abram is when God speaks to him. He's in Haran. But the interesting thing, and I'm pointing over here like there's a map that y'all can see where I'm talking about. So say that this mark that I made on the wall right here, this is Ur of the Chaldea, this is Ur, and then you go up and here's Haran, okay? So just imagine this being modern day Turkey. So they've gone up like this. So it is a span. I apologize. I'm not right. How about that? There's something wrong with me. But anyway, here we go. We're going up. And so but these were polytheistic people, meaning that they worshipped lots of gods, not just one God. And each area you went to, you added a new one. Like we do this. Oh, well, we have one kind of like that. They're kind of the same, but not really. But I kind of like yours. Well, I'll add yours to my list. And so they would pick up all these gods and worship all of them and do all these things. And so this is what's so fascinating to me, that Abram listened to this God, this random God that he didn't know, who said, "Hi, I'm God, and I'd like for you to follow me." And Go. Leave your family and go. And he does. Now, there's debate about whether he really followed directions because he took his wife and his stuff and his nephew Lot, because he didn't have any children, as we know. But and technically, Sarah, or as she was known then, Sarai, was his sister. Really was his sister. Same father, different mothers, I believe. I believe her father was also Terah. Jennifer, is that right? See, Jennifer Glover is here. I called her by name because she always knows the facts. They're related. Important to know. So, because as they pack up and they move, they're going this way. Y'all are getting to see my map. You are not, and you're missing out. So as they go down into Israel, the land of Canaan, because it's not Israel yet. So they're in this land of Canaan. This is the Mediterranean Sea. This is Egypt over here. And they're in this land right here along the coast. As they go down, every time that they would come across someone where Abram was afraid, he would go, "You're my sister. We're not married because they will kill me because you're beautiful and they will kill me. And so this is how this happens." And Sarai was like, "Okay, sure." So these are the kinds of things that are going on. And the only reason that this is important is to show Abram wasn't perfect. He didn't magically become someone who always made the right decision. But he was obedient, and he left, and he went. So they get to, you guys, and I'm still pointing because in my mind I really see this. I've got to quit. I see the whole map here. But the thing about this area, it's a desert. It's a desert here. It's not lush and green and always going to have food. It's not a land, it's not the land of milk and honey. Even though that is what God is going to call it. It is not that, because it doesn't have all the things. It doesn't have all the things. It's nothing. It really is nothing. I've been there. You drive on a bus for any length of time to get to places and you're like, there is nothing here but brown dirt. This is nothing. It's hot, and they up here in the kind of the north east part of Israel, it's very green and lush part of the year, but the rest of the time, because when I went, it was February, 3 years ago this month, maybe 3 years ago right now. Yeah, okay. 3 years ago I was there, and it was very lush, and our tour guide was like, "Y'all are seeing green. Don't think that this is green all the time. This is not what it looks like all the time. It's green right now. It won't be in a month." And so I was like, it's hard for me to imagine that it's not green and lush and that all these crops and things, self-sustaining things can happen. So when Abram gets down there, he leaves because he's like, "We are going to die. There's a famine. We can't grow anything. We got to get out of here. We got to do something." People, there is an argument that he disobeyed. God told him to go to this land and that he would take care of him. But Abram went to Egypt, because Egypt, the part that is right here, is the Nile Valley. And that's the only part of Egypt that really grows anything. So all of it is just really lush all the way down through the Nile Valley. So they get there. Again, Abram says, "You are not my wife, you're my sister." And apparently Sarai really was gorgeous, because they crossed into Egypt and Pharaoh's people were like, "Hot woman just came in, a hot woman came in. She's with her brother. You want to meet her?" And Pharaoh says, "Yes." Hot woman. Sarai, hot woman. That's how you think of her now. So they go and get her, and they take her to Pharaoh. Well, it comes out because Pharaoh's household has a plague set upon it. And they come out, and so Pharaoh comes, is like, "Why did you tell me that this was your sister? Clearly she's not." And now all of this has happened. And he was like, well, I was afraid. I thought you were going to kill me. And he goes, but now I've got all these problems in my household. Get out. Not only get out of my house, get out of this country. Go away. But Abram got to leave Egypt with all kinds of wealth. He had accumulated flocks and herds and servants and all kinds of things. So he had this. So he leaves, even though he may not have gone under God's idea. I mean, it's not exactly God's idea or his plan. And even though he lied when he got there, he still left better than he went. He had gained a lot of wealth and a lot of entourage as he went. So, and that's important. The idea that he picks up slaves and servants is important. So he leaves. He leaves out of there. They get to where they come back into the promised land. And by this time, Lot, his nephew, had also grown very wealthy and had his own thing. And there just wasn't, they couldn't stay together anymore. There wasn't enough to support both large groups. So Abram looks at Lot and says, look, you go. Wherever you go, I will go somewhere else, but you pick. Abram gave Lot the first choice. So Lot, of course, chooses the better piece. And he settles near some cities called Sodom and Gomorrah, which also becomes important later. So Abram kind of breaks off and takes this dry, arid place. So there's all of this going on. Lot's over here. Abram's down here. He's there. There's all of these different little scenarios are working in this story. And Abraham is like, who am I? I have all of this, and for what purpose? What's the purpose for this? And God says, well, because I'm going to make you a father of nations, you will be. And he was like, that's how? Because I have no heir. I have no son. Am I going to leave it to my servant? How is this going to happen? How am I going to have this? And he was like, I'm telling you, you are going to be the father of nations. And so God makes this covenant with Abraham. He makes this covenant with him. Now, there is a lot of time that passes when God first makes that statement and when it comes into fruition, right? So, the best thing, and Abraham has to rescue Abram. Sorry, he's not even Abraham yet. Abram has to rescue Lot. He has to go get him, and he's he decimates and goes and gets Lot from Dan and brings him back down and does all this, and he's had his covenant with the Lord. And then at some point in chapter 16 of Genesis, Sarai is like, maybe what God meant is that you should take my maid and have a baby this way. Maybe this is how this should work out. And Abram is like, okay. I feel like Abram might have been a little bit of a pushover. He seemed pretty easy to, after all, he did pack up his belongings and leave when God said go, which not a bad thing, but perhaps at this point he should have gone, you know what, I don't think this is a good idea. This is not what God said. So Sarai gives Abram Hagar, her servant. And Hagar is Egyptian. So here's this bad choice that they made about going to Egypt and not waiting for the Lord to provide of them. They go to Egypt, they get this Hagar. Again, they're not waiting for the Lord to provide. They get a little impatient, and this happens. And so Hagar, of course, has a child. It's a son, and she has a moment with the Lord. And we learn that the name of the Lord for El Roi, which means the God who sees, because as she leaves, because Sarai is being so horrible to her, God sees her and goes to her and says, I see you. And the son, you are going to give birth to a son. You shall call him Ishmael, and he will be a father of many. he will be very successful, but people are not going to like him. But you have to go back. You have to go back. You have to go back to your mistress. You have to go back. No matter what she's doing to you, you have to be a faithful servant, and you have to go back. So Hagar goes back, and sure enough, Ishmael is born, and not what God had intended, and he is not going to be the one that carries out the promise that the Lord has already given to Abram. That's not going to happen. But at the same time, he's already promised Hagar. He's already made the promise that, okay, he's going to be fine. So we see that part of the story. And then we get, there's lots of other things that happen. So the best part, he has to have circumcision comes in as the mark of the covenant, and poor Ishmael at, what was he, 13? 13. He was 13, and so he had to be circumcised as 13, and I don't know, but I couldn't get Van Trotter to get a COVID vaccine. I can't imagine looking at him saying, hey, by the way, we're going to get circumcised today, buddy. All of that happened. Again, Abram is doing what God asked. He goes through these moments where he does exactly what the Lord asked. So then Sodom and Gomorrah comes, Lot comes, and so Abram, and this is my faith, this is the part that sticks out to me about Abraham. This is the part that I want to emulate, because the Lord, in Genesis 18, chapter 1, verse 1, chapter 18, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre. I don't know if that's how you say that. While he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day, Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. Yes, he's Abraham now. I skipped that part. He changes his name. This is where his name was changed, and he will now be Abraham, and Sarai is now Sarah. So they've made that change in, I believe, chapter 17. So, Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham is sitting there, and he sees these people coming, and he gets up. And he goes to them and bows low to the ground. Verse 3, he said, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way now that you have come to your servant. Very well, they answered, do as you say. So Abraham goes and says, Sarah, make something to eat. Let's go. Go get the fattened calf, the goat, whatever. Go get it. Bring it. We've got guests. We have got important guests that are here. Abraham recognizes that it's the Lord. He recognizes that it's the Lord. And he runs out to meet him immediately. He sees them coming and he runs to him. I read a story about Jimmy Carter that said when he was president, he would stay with random people. Like he would call them in, so his staff would say, hey, Jimmy Carter wants to spend the night with you tonight. Can you host the president? And then what do you say? You can't go, oh, not tonight, I'm busy. You go, oh, yes, the president can come over. That would be fantastic. And then what happens when you do that? All breaks loose, and you start cleaning the baseboards, and now all your children have to put up everything they've ever owned. Everything is stuffed in. Sheets are washed. Everything is sparkling clean. No one really needs to move in the house when it's clean. You sit down and you just wait for the president to arrive. And then when they get there, you're on your best behavior. You can't do. So the question is, and the story that I was reading was drawing the connection to when you see the president, when you see the Lord coming towards your house, do you go, oh, hey, or do you go, shoot, let me go get this put up. Oh, they're coming. They're almost here. They're almost here. Do you run around and rush and try to hide things? Or do you drop it and meet them in the road? And I think that's important. That's the thing that has stuck out to me about Abraham, is that he didn't even turn his back to see who was behind him. He immediately got up and went and fell at his feet and bowed down. To me, that's the important thing about Abraham. Yes, he was obedient. He was sort of patient because he did do a lot of waiting. And he set out these things, but he immediately rose, ran to the Lord, and dropped down. He didn't try to, if he picks up my phone, was he going to see what I've been scrolling at? Oh, this song is not... We only listen to contemporary Christian and gospel in this house. There's no rap at all, or country music talking about girls in miniskirts. That's not here, Lord. That doesn't happen here. He didn't do any of that. He didn't try to hide anything. He was simply excited that the Lord was coming towards him. And that to me is so important and so convicting, because I would not do that. I would see him at the base of the driveway and go, shoot, we've got a few minutes. Everybody clean up. Oh, I can't get all these dishes out of the sink. I can't do that. It's kind of like Mary and Martha. Martha is busy cleaning, making sure everything is just so. Mary sits at the feet. And that's not to say that it's not important to be serving and to doing, but sometimes you have to know when the point of, I'm running out to meet you. I'm going to not clean the kitchen. I'm going to go sit and learn and study. Sometimes we have to know the difference and know the right time to do those things. So another interesting part of this story is, this is also where the Lord says, the next time I come, in a year from now, you will have a child. Sarah will have conceived. Sarah laughed, and that's why his name is Isaac, because Isaac means laugh. Anyway, so the other important part of this story was not that. That's important, but so when they got up to leave, God says, should I tell Abraham what I'm about to do? Should I give him a little warning? Yeah, I'm going to. I'm gonna tell him what's going to happen. So the Lord confides in Abraham. And what's that like? He confides in him and he goes, the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah has reached my ears, and I just cannot stand for it. We can't have that. I'm going to destroy these cities. And Abraham immediately says, no. He immediately thinks of Lot, who lives there. Not that Lot was participating in what was going on in the wickedness, but he was living amongst it and not really doing anything about it. And Abraham says, wait. If we find 50 righteous people, will you not destroy it? And the Lord says, okay, if you can find 50 righteous people, I'll leave it. It'll be great, just like that. And Abraham goes, oh, well, okay, 50's a lot. How about 20? How about 20? If I can find 20. And God says again, okay, you can find, fine. Finally, Abraham works his way down and goes, okay, wait, can I at least go get my nephew before it happens? Can I go get Lot? He's like a son to me. He's been with me, Can we at least go warn him? And God says, yes, I will have my angels warn him. So these other two, they leave and they go to Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're not going to get into all of that soap opera, because it is a soap opera. Read it if you want to know the full details. But what eventually happens is that, I'll give you the short version. What eventually happens is the angels come, they say, you have got to get out of here because the Lord is going to wipe this place off the face of the earth because it's wicked. And so Lot goes and tells his daughters and his wife and his sons-in-law. His sons-in-law refused to leave. They were like, your dad is cracked and we're not going. That's nuts. So his daughters go, his wife goes. They are fleeing the city. We all know that Lot's wife stops and looks back, and she turns into a pillar of salt. But they escape, and nobody is left. Nobody went with them, and the two cities were wiped off for their wickedness. So that's just the end of the story. But the interesting thing to me too about this is that Abraham talked to the Lord, and he said, wait, can I? And God was like, sure. Wait. Okay, fine. Well, can I just go get my nephew? Yes, you can do that. This is what you say to him. They had this conversation. The Lord was willing to banter with Abraham. He was willing to have this discussion with him and say, I don't know about this. So this discussion and this relationship that they have leads to these discussions. Like Abraham was like, when Isaac finally comes, Abraham's like, but I can't forget about Ishmael. He's my son too. I want him to be blessed too. And God says, okay. And we knew that he was going to say okay because he'd already promised that to Hagar. So Abraham again says, I know that this was not right, but he's my son and I love him too. And I know that Isaac is the one that's going to do, but what about Ishmael? And God says, okay. So he's open with him. He has these conversations with him where he's open with him and he's honest. Even while talking about things that weren't necessarily in God's plan. Even these things that he's not completely blessed and said, here as it is, you're going to go and do this and this is going to be okay. God said, you did not follow my instructions. I told you to wait and now you're going to have this part. And Abraham still stays close. Close enough that, as we know, when Isaac is born, God says, go and take your son and make that offering. Use him as an offering to me. And immediately Abraham says, okay, packs up everything and says, Isaac, come on with me. And there they go. And Isaac believes and has faith. In Hebrews chapter 11, we get some more insight into this interaction, because Abraham, the writer of Hebrews says, Abraham knew and had faith and could go and do that because God had already promised him that he would be the father of many nations. That he would, and it was through Isaac. He knew that this promise had been made. He was in covenant with the Lord. So he knew that either God would raise him back up from the dead or that God was going to provide an offering in his place. And that is what happens. He provides a ram in the thicket. Jehovah Jireh. See, if you've been watching for Names of God, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord that provides. You've heard me tell this story before. And when you talk about stuff like this to the youth, they're like, well, I mean adults too, but sometimes youth are braver to ask questions. They say, why would that happen? Why would God do that? God is so mean. Why would he ask him to kill his son? I like to think that the Lord asked Abraham to do that because he knew how Abraham would respond, and God already knew that he saw that faith that Abraham had, and God knew that he was going to deliver on his promise and not use Isaac. And of course, Abraham didn't know that, but Abraham had the faith to know, I got to trust God. He's already, for Pete's sake, I'm real old and so is Sarah and we've got this baby. And it's really not possible for this to happen, but here it is. He had seen how God had already worked in his life, so he could say, I'm going to believe you. I'm going to do this. Abraham lives a long life as God promised him. He does not see all of the promise. He does not see Canaan become his. He does not see it as a land flowing with milk and honey. He doesn't see all of that. But he has the promise. And he saw the first steps of it coming into fruition, so that he knew that it was going to continue the way the Lord had said. So when we look at Abraham and what kind of man he was and why he was considered a friend of God, it was because he was obedient. It was because he had some patience. It was because he trusted the Lord with all that he had, even so far as to give his son back to him. And he was excited to see him. He wanted that relationship with him. He dropped everything and ran to meet him. So what can we do to be like Abraham and to have that relationship with the Lord? I think for me, it's the idea of going. Just go. Just go meet him. Your house doesn't have to be clean. He's not going to tick that off your list. Your hair doesn't have to look good. Thank goodness. You don't have to have on the right shade of lipstick. You don't have to have the career that you think that you're supposed to have. Your children do not have to be well behaved and make straight A's and be all the things. You don't even have to have kids. You don't even have to have a wife or a husband. You don't even have to have any of that. All you have to do is run with excitement and genuine gladness that the Lord's coming your way. Because he's always coming. He's always coming your way. He's always wanting to meet you. He's always wanting that. Are you going to go meet him? Next week we're going to talk about, we're going to skip Isaac. He just doesn't have very much written about him. We'll discuss him a little bit, but we're going to talk about Jacob next week. And Jacob's an interesting cat too. So I'm really excited about this and getting to know these people in the Bible and what made them friends of God. Thank you. See y'all next week. Hey, Adam, I hope you're coming tonight.